You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin'.
You mean shiny.
Shh! You wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo.
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews for King's published work and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod. And follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus content that's spread across all of ObsessiveViewer.com's various podcasts. Recently on the Patreon, I've been doing what I've dubbed Flanagan Fridays, where every Friday I review something from the world of Mike Flanagan. I started with an immediate reaction review to his movie Absentia. And then for the last now 8 weeks, I've been doing weekly recaps of The Haunting of Hill House. And it's my first time watching it. I am loving it. I have 2 or 3 episodes left. And oh my God, I don't want to leave the Crane family. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and today on the show, we're reviewing a couple of Stephen King short stories. First, we'll review Nona from the 1985 collection Skeleton Crew, and then we'll be reviewing The Gingerbread Girl from Just After Sunset. And joining me to do that is not Tiny, because he and I recorded Obsessive Viewer last night, and I'm giving him the night off. But joining me to do this episode is our dear friend and host of the fantastic and excellent one-woman Stephen King podcast, The Year of Underrated Stephen King. It's the one and only Kim C. Kim, welcome back to the show, and welcome to 2024 on Tower Junkies in March. How's it going, and welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, Matt. I'm so happy. I always get such a pep in my step when I'm on Tower Junkies. So it's so great to be here. It's so nice to see you.
Yes, it is great to see you too. The last time you and I spoke on a podcast, this was, oh geez, wow. Wow. Do you want to take a guess when the last time we were together podcasting? Because it's been a while. I have it right in front of me and I'm shocked.
I know we talked about Priscilla because...
Okay. I forgot you were on Obsessive Viewer. Okay, that makes a lot more sense than...
I definitely forced your hand with that one.
Oh, that was great. I was so happy.
It was so much fun. I was like, Matt, please talk about this movie with me.
Yes.
But the last time we chatted King, I don't know.
It was episode 91 of Tower Junkies, which was in September of 2023.
What?
That is unacceptable.
A million years ago.
Yes. And our Priscilla episode of Obsessive Viewer was November 16th. So it's been a while. Oh, yeah. So it's been a while. I'm super glad that you're here and that we're talking King. Just super happy to have you on the show and to be back doing Tower Junkies, because it's been dormant for a little bit, and I feel bad about that every time.
It happens, man. Time is a funny thing lately, especially January and February are so strange. They are, God, there's 10,000 days in January. Mm-hmm. It's a slog, and February goes by in a blink, and then March, you're finally sort of waking up and you're like, oh my God, it's March. Oh, dang.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like shout out to Obsessive Viewer, my kind of main podcast, movie review podcast. I have been really grinding it out and doing weekly episodes. So every Thursday there's an episode of Obsessive Viewer. I've been keeping that consistent since November. So I've done 19 consecutive episodes. 19, hey. Consecutive episodes. So like I have been doing the podcast things, but like you said, like March is when you wake up and it's like, oh yeah, I have 2 other podcasts, one of which being Tower Junkies. So, yep. But I'm hoping to do more Tower Junkies and Anthology, my other podcast, as well. So I think now that I'm a little bit more sure-footed with Obsessive Viewer doing weekly, I can branch out and do more Tower Junkies and Anthology. And then, of course, Patreon it's millstone around my neck. That's the right comparison, right?
That sounds good. I like it.
Yeah. But anyway, that's all my stuff. What have you been up to? How is the year of underrated Stephen King going? And I don't want to lead you to announce anything, but I do know that you posted on your Instagram story the artwork or the image of a certain thing that's going to happen.
Well, yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, okay. It's been going well. We kicked off 2024 with a really awesome constant reader interview with fiction author Nat Cassidy. So that was amazing. And then I've returned to the quartet.
Yes.
With Wind Through the Keyhole, Matt. It was so good.
Mm-hmm.
It was so, I'm so excited. I'm pumped. I'm ready for Wolves of the Calla. It's happening this year. Like, I cannot be stopped on my tower return.
I'm so excited for you.
Me too.
Yeah.
So that was the latest episode. And then for my book club here, we're in my hometown, the theme is the road to Holly Gibney. So of course, we just finished up Mr. Mercedes and I was like, okay, well, I gotta share some thoughts. Like this is very fresh. So that's coming up. That'll be the next episode.
Nice.
And you are correct, sir. There was some artwork released very recently because finally, after 4 years of podcasting, I'm going to do a Patreon.
Yes.
I know.
I'm so excited. Like we've talked about it and everything. Like this isn't new information to me, but I'm still just as excited as I was when I first learned the information.
You've been
so
such an instrumental help. I think it was like last year, probably all the times we chatted last year. I was like, Matt, how do I do a Patreon? Like, what do I do? What do you think? Do you like it? And so I just asked you 1,001 questions. And I had been planning ever since last year, like, okay, let's make this happen. What do we want it to look like? So yes, it has a title. We have artwork and I'm hoping to have it ready to go and to have it public next month. So
nice.
April will release The Dance Macabre with Kim C.
That is such a brilliant, I love it.
Yay!
It's great. Yep.
I'm so glad. I think it'll be very fun because a lot of people thought I'm doing Stephen King's Dance Macabre, so they thought I'm doing the nonfiction. And I was like, not quite. Stay tuned. Because a couple people, they were like, oh my God, I love that book. I can't wait. And I was like, well, just
taking the title.
More updates to follow.
I am just so excited for you because like anytime that we talked about it and talked about Patreon and you would ask me questions about it, like in my head, I think like in the deep recesses of my mind, I'd be like, okay, how can I express how excited I am about this and how exciting it is without terrifying you away from doing a Patreon? Because I love doing Patreon stuff. It is like, for me, since I have very much a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks approach to Patreon, it's a little bit grueling sometimes, but it's also like, it's a platform for me to just share my opinion on things without having to do like a full-fledged like podcast episode and coordinating things and everything. So that's how I do it. But like your approach is going to be fantastic. I'm so excited for you.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's still sort of in the stew pot of how I want it, how I really want to execute it. But it's definitely going to have a more Kim C letting her hair down.
Nice.
Maybe a little more unfiltered. Well, it might be a lot of fun. And so it might be less teacher and more let's go get drinks after class kind of
I
Kim
like
C.
that. I like that a lot. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, stay tuned, my friend.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And we will promote the hell out of it here on Tower Junkies.
Oh, so nice.
Yes. To circle back and talk about something you mentioned before, your book club with Mr. Mercedes and the Road to Holly Gibney. Have you, just out of curiosity, have you had the book club for Mr. Mercedes yet? Or is that something that's like scheduled out that you haven't done yet?
We did.
Okay. How did it go?
Question.
Like, how did your group like it and everything?
Oh, this is such a great question. I'm so excited to talk about it. It went really well.
Nice.
For the most part, everybody is such a good sport. We did have a brand new Stephen King reader. This was their
nice.
Matt. Oh my God. This was her very first Stephen King title. I think it's not what she usually reads, but she was a trooper. Nice. And she enjoyed it. But yeah, she definitely mentioned it was gritty, it was dark, and it is
There's
all
some
of those
really
things.
dark stuff in there too for a first time reader. That's a very special experience, I'm sure.
Agree. The majority of folks love Holly. They love her to pieces. But they had a lot of thoughts on the real ugliness of Brady, if you know what I mean, like real gross stuff there, and some of the sort of uncouth decisions for Jerome and Tyrone feel good delight. You remember? Yeah, there was a little bit of head scratchy there. So, but overall, I think they enjoyed it. They like Holly a lot, which is very surprising to me because when I first read the book, she did not move the meter for me.
Same. Yep.
Right? I was like, okay, this weird, awkward little strange person. Okay, no worries. And I was way more focused on everything else. And so they were really pumped that she was going to be in more things.
Nice.
And I was like, oh,
that's
wow,
awesome.
This is great. Yeah. So I didn't lose them with Mr. Mercedes. Like they're on board. And what was really fun is I was trying to tell them about Finders Keepers, and I was like, okay, so this one is very different, ladies and gentlemen. Like, Holly does still make an appearance, but just buckle up, okay?
Yeah.
Just go with it. So I am having a lot of fun because I've read all of the Holly books except for the newest one. Haven't read that one yet. I
can't wait. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm really into the like post-COVID, during COVID King output. It's fascinating.
Oh, it's so interesting. It also like leads to a bit of divisiveness among the readership. I would say that without going too deep into it. And like, I don't know. It's just, it's always kind of fun and a little infuriating to read some of the criticisms about some of the things that he does in his work. But anyway, it's still fascinating to me the way that he just writes about like current events and current climates with such a sharpness. It's why he continues to thrive for decades into his career.
Absolutely. The way this guy captures not only American pop culture, but just American politics, American life for the past 5 decades.
Yep.
It's just it's insane, Matt. It's startling.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that today, and like we'll talk more about the stories we're going to review, of course. But like one little thing, this has no bearing on the story or anything. But like I think it was in the Gingerbread, it was in the Gingerbread Girl, where there's a thing that King does, and I don't know if this is just something that I'm just latching onto because I just find it interesting. It's not even interesting, but like when he is writing about his characters, like their everyday lives. So like their day-to-day life, and just kind of like adding that texture, that context of like, this is what they did today. They did this and that. And for some reason, anytime he talks about the food that they eat, just feels so much like an American idea, like most notably like middle class America or working class America. Like I remember in it was Rat, I think, in If It Bleeds. Like it's just like, oh yeah, he had a couple of boxes of spaghetti and boiled up the pasta and had a jar of sauce with it. And I'm like, the way he talks about it, there's something about it that just feels so relatable in a way, maybe because I have zero skills at cooking. But like, I don't know. And in Gingerbread Girl, he talks about like she has like Swanson dinners or something. And I'm just like, yeah, because I can just buy a $4 Swanson dinner and microwave it, and that's a meal. Like, I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does. You're dead on. Because when I teach my students about description and stuff like that, I always go over the top with requests for food. I always tell them, you guys, food is such an amazing sensory experience on the page. Over describe food, do it. And so I always get all these wonderful food descriptions, and it really teaches them to bring in those 5 senses in their fiction drafts, which I love. But you're so right, Matt, because especially when King utilizes something quintessentially American, like for example, in Lacey's story, she makes hamburger helper.
Oh yeah.
And like, if you are not an American, I don't think it's sold overseas. And maybe it is. I hope I mean, you're not missing anything, friends, overseas. Right. But hamburger helper is something that my parents, as working class, middle class, my mom would make us hamburger helper, and I'm like 6-7 years old with my little, spoon and bowl, and and like I loved the little talking glove logo guy. Oh, yeah. But he does this a lot. He always uses American brand names. And he's also, you could tell he's got a real picky palate. He's not super adventurous. So a lot of his characters, there's always a pasta. There's always a ground beef. He's a big burger guy. It's great. So no, you're dead on with it. And in Gingerbread Girl, she has Stouffer's lasagna.
That's what it was.
And so you're like, I can see that box and I can taste that bite. I know these things. So it's actually really special. For the longest time, I wasn't crazy about it because I was like, why does he do that? Why? But he is just writing American life. He really is.
It's like, he really taps into like what a lot of people would refer to as like the struggle meal. Like when you're like between paychecks and I have like, this is what's in my fridge. I can make something.
What's in the cupboard that I can heat up.
Exactly.
Shelf stable cheapy goods.
Yep. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how we got on that tangent. I don't know how I brought us to that tangent, but it's just something that I just thought about.
Love it. All good.
Yeah. Another thing that I completely forgot that I was going to bring up, before we get into the reviews and everything is, my friend Mike, who has made an appearance on this podcast, but he was the co-host of Obsessive Viewer for a long time and makes appearances on there. But anyway, he texted me the other day, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Kim, because It's an interesting question. He said, "Is there any Stephen King story darker than Pet Sematary?" I can't think of anything else so sad and grim. And I was like, "That's a good question." And then I was like, "Well, if we're including short fiction,
right.
like there is a treasure trove."
Absolutely.
But, yeah. What jumps to mind to you for dark Stephen King stuff? And have you read Night Shift yet? Have you gotten around to that yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
To my shame. It's coming.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. But
No, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know I ask you like every time.
I promise. When it happens, it's going to be dedicated to Matt Hurt.
Nice.
Like every single episode. So I love Mike's question.
Mhm.
I think it's so good. Yes, Mike, there is. So God, Pet Sematary is so dang good. It's just amazing. And I understand the absolutely serrated knife edge of the dark subject within Pet Sematary with the loss of a child, and it's dark. But
Oh yeah.
the second, like before you even finish the question, Matt, I was like 1,000% apt pupil.
Yeah, that's what I told him.
1,000%. Yes.
Yep.
1,000.
It's that, and what I remember from like the library policeman too.
Oh my God.
Yes. Like
God damn.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I had told him that
the ending of Bag of Bones is also haunted me forever.
That's a blind spot for me. I still haven't read that one.
Don't. I mean, of course, yes, read it, but my God, Matt, my God, I'm scarred. That is one that like it messed me up for. I think I'm still messed up. I don't think I've recovered. It was that bad.
That's amazing.
but it was just the end. So like the whole book is a pretty solid gothic little ghost story there. Good stuff.
Nice.
Interesting stuff, I'll say. But then the ending was like the most traumatic thing I've read from King thus far on my journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And hands down, bar none. And I understand everyone has their boundaries and their sensitivities and the things that really get to them. And I think that went through all of mine. That went through all of them. All of them.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it's real rad. It's real bad. It's real
I'm so sold on that now. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, part of me feels like someday I'm just gonna need to talk about it like in a podcast setting to like therapy session it because I am scarred.
Wow.
But I'm so glad we collectively were like apt people.
Oh, apt people. You 100%. Like,
God, Matt, it's so depraved. It's so depraved.
It's brilliant in its depravity. It's like it is just. He's a master storyteller. I just can't like that. And like, I had mentioned to Mike. I don't think I ever got around to mentioning this, but like, for a more kind of. I don't know, maybe not, I don't know if I would necessarily, well, I don't know, but I was going to throw out like Survivor Type and The Jaunt, just as stuff that's just like very unhinged darkness from him. Yeah. But yeah, and I do kind of struggle with thinking about like the empathic darkness of like Pet Sematary and like where that exists in Stephen King's other work. So like Apt Pupil, it's depraved, it's dark, it's horrifying in like what people are capable of way. But like, I don't know if there's anything for me that I've read that touches on the, like, I feel such a deep pit of despair for this character as I do with Pet Sematary.
Yeah. That tracks. Yeah. Pet Sematary, I liked what you said about the empathy being there because for being such a dark story, there's a lot of heart and a lot of grief and like peripheral grief. Like we feel the pain of the Creed family so strongly. And so it's like that heart is what I think allows me to not put it as the most disturbing.
Gotcha.
And I think it's because apt pupil makes me feel so disgusting inside. Like my soul feels filthy. And you are so correct. It is psychologically fascinating. And I always have that right next to any apt pupil discussion. Yep. It is fascinating to see Todd and Kurt Dusander interact in this super disgusting, inappropriate relationship. Yep. It's just manipulation and mind games and chess moves. It's awesome. But God, they are two despicable human beings.
Absolutely.
And that whole story. There's a lot of cool stuff on the surface, especially if you like psych stuff. But God in heaven, Matt, like that story makes me want to die. Yes. It's so awful. There's no heart. There's no heart for me there. It's like, this is disgusting. I hate you both. I want to kill you both. I hope you both die swiftly today now. And so with that in mind, that is my bottom line. Like that's my rock bottom. Yeah. But there's so much dread and doom in Pet Sematary, but it is not the worst for me.
No. Yeah. That's just such a special part of King's writing too, that he can, like, that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited for you to get to Night Shift. Because there's just so much, I don't know, darkness in there and just like gritty stuff that is borderline a little bit of pulpy or pop stuff, but it is there. I'm like trying to find my list of short fiction, but I don't know. I think that there is a lot of King stuff that is just very, very dark and depraved. That I hope that Mike scratches the surface of.
There's some that hit real hard, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question for you because I haven't read this title. The Dark Half, I've heard, is a little icky. Where would you rank that one?
That is definitely up there in terms of the just kind of, it's more about the cerebral darkness of like this, like the plot is very much out there. It's like a split personality or like an entity that is coming after you, and he has to defend himself and his family because of it. It's like, it's really, there's a level to that is very dark and gritty, and also more hews toward thriller storytelling rather than like just despair of like Pet Sematary. So it has its darkness, but I honestly, I don't think it holds a candle to Pet Sematary in terms of the emotional aspect of the darkness to it. But it's a good one. It's definitely a good one for that though.
Good to know.
Yeah. Yep. And the other thing I had mentioned to Mike, kind of related to that, is that I've heard that a lot of his Bachman stuff is that way. But like I haven't read any of his Bachman books. So like I said, like I've heard The Long Walk is very, very dark and very unsettling in that regard. So yeah,
for The Long Walk. Oh wow, I'm excited for you to read that one, Matt, because that story, first of all, it's so incredible for so many reasons. Number one, it's his very first novel. He's like 18 when he writes it, so it's very impressive for that. The premise is so cool and bleak, and that's what that book is for me. It's like a bleak Holocaust slog.
Wow.
Yes.
What's really funny, and I don't remember if I'd mentioned this on the podcast or to you, but like part of my Patreon thing is I do Church of King, where I review Stephen King stuff. I haven't started that up again this year yet, but I am soon. But we were talking before we started recording that, like, weather and stuff, and like I live in very close proximity to like a trail So my like idea is like I have like the long walk like separated into sections. So I'll do like reviews on Patreon for like the first 100 pages, the next 100 pages, blah, blah, blah. My crazy radical thought is that I will listen to the audiobook, but only while walking that trail. And to take it a step further, no pun intended, I might like I have like wireless lav mics that I have and everything. So like maybe I'll record the Patreon stuff while walking the trail. And do that. That's my goal for when the weather gets more predictably warm and comfortable. So that's my plan.
Oh my God, Matt, I support this a million times. I'm so excited. That is so cool. That is so, because one of the things that is kind of unforgettable is the fact that I believe the walkers have to stay at 4 miles per hour.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So 4 miles per hour is actually a little quick.
Yeah, that is. I will make this pledge right now. No fucking way am I going that fast. I'm like,
right?
I am going at a slow pace.
Absolutely. Like when I treadmill it, I'm like, God damn. Like,
yeah.
Too quick.
Oh, yeah. Like I can't. I'm dying at 2.
There's a lot to celebrate about that book, but just, wow, the premise itself, just the walkers and this body horror is, it is very bleak. And
I can't wait.
Yeah. It's one that, oh God, I don't know if I want to read it again, Matt. So I think that's the mark of what we're talking about here in terms of being so low. But I know several gentlemen who absolutely adore this book because it's so bleak. So it's an interesting thought to mull around, because it's like, I feel that apt pupil repels me, you know, like some of these stories are so awful, they repel me.
Yep.
But then some of these bleak ones are beloved because they're so dark. And so, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to kind of see where people fall with that.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a sensitive Sally, and I'm like, if I remember when I recorded my episode on the long walk, and I was also reading it at a very it was during 2020. So
oh no, okay.
If you could imagine, it was awful. But I just remember sitting like I am now, recording it and like pressing my hands into the ground, like what a blessing this is to sit. Like it really, really messes with you. It really like.
That is so awesome. That's really exciting. Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, because I would have been shot if I would have sat down. So it's great. I'm so excited for the outdoor long walk coverage.
Yes.
I wholeheartedly support this.
Nice. I will definitely get the ball rolling on that for sure. And I hope I haven't bitten off more than I can chew, or if the recording is just going to be me panting while wind is like affecting the recording. So
it's going to be so meta. I love it.
Oh yeah. There was another thing I wanted to bring up that I had a thought, but I completely forgot about it. But yeah, I lost it. Anyway. Anything else about the podcast, about the Year of Underrated Stephen King? By the way, tell people where they can find you online and everything. Usually I give that give you that opening, but we kind of got lost in the conversation, so I apologize.
No, we always have so much fun.
Oh yeah,
that it's like, sorry everybody, keep up. So I'm pretty much everywhere. Spotify is a good spot. Apple, all of the places. And if you haven't said hello yet, if you haven't checked out the show and want to share your thoughts, give me some notes. If I pronounced a name wrong, if you want to give me a direct quote, I'm completely open to that. And you can go to underratedsk@gmail.com, or we're on all the socials. So you can always say hi there as well.
Awesome. Yes, and links to all of Kim's stuff will be in the show notes of this episode, which will be able to be found at, or is currently able to be found if you're listening to this, obviously, towerjunkiespod.com/094. So Kim, we've got 2 stories to kind of talk about tonight. So kind of as background for the listener, what I've done is I've created a master list of short fiction for Stephen King. And I have this idea that, like, you know, to keep the ball rolling in terms of getting podcast episodes out there, I'm going to have people on to talk about 1 or 2 pieces of short fiction that haven't been covered on the podcast. This will help give me time, and me and Tiny time, to maybe get cracking on the drawing of the 3 and doing like the more big episodes. So anyway, I don't know if the listener really needed to know all of that, but but the 2 stories that you chose for this recording, Kim, was Nona from Skeleton Crew and the Gingerbread Girl from Just After Sunset. So before we get into the actual reviews, was there anything in particular that drew you to picking these 2 specific stories for this episode?
I'm loving this question. I'm just so excited. I'm smiling like an idiot right now because Matt makes me feel like the princess of the ball when he's like, Kim, you get to choose. I'm like, oh my God, the honor. So usually in our past story coverage, I've liked to pick the really pretty literary ones that are just rich and deep, and they would absolutely impress any naysayer of King. They would impress longtime King fans and my fellow snobby snob grad school classmates. So that's what I typically go for in my Stephen King short stories. But I was feeling a certain type of way when Matt asked me. And I was like, you know what? I want some stories with teeth, very sharp teeth.
Nice.
And there were these 2 jumped out, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember these. Oh dang. And I was like, yeah, these are soaked in violence. Wow. Very violent, gritty, visceral, frightening. I'm like, let's do it. So I can't explain what. Maybe it's because I've recently read Mr. Mercedes, so I've been in the grime of the Ohio streets.
Yes.
And I'm feeling a little gritty and grimy. I don't know, but I went for these 2, and I'm so excited to talk about them.
Absolutely. I was going to make the joke that, like, well, you know, you say that they're gritty and violent and everything, but at its heart, Nona is a love story. So...
yeah, lots of love and murder.
Yeah.
It's real sexy too.
It's out there in a variety of ways. Like,
it's so wild.
Yeah, I love it. So let's go into it then.
Okay.
Yeah. So Nona, we'll do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. I'll mark the timestamps and everything, but you can knock these out really quickly. But to kind of bring us into the non-spoiler portion of Nona, I'll read a brief summary of the plot. Or an intro for it, I guess. The story is the account of an unnamed man being held in prison, recounting his life as a college dropout who met and fell in love with a beautiful girl named Nona while aimlessly hitchhiking on a snowy winter's night in Maine. That night, the narrator is seduced by Nona into murdering several innocent bystanders. This was first published in the 1978 anthology Shadows, and later collected in King's 1985 collection Skeleton Crew. Everything I just said came from Wikipedia. So Kim, non-spoilers, how did you feel about Nona?
Oh my gosh. Well, firstly, for those out there who haven't read it, make it a priority. This is, for the time it's being written, really beautiful. This is actually a very beautifully written story. Our narrator is very melancholy as he is reporting to the reader from prison. And so that in itself kind of colors it a certain kind of way. He's reflecting on what happened to him and his life. And what we learn is this is kind of a girl crazy lovesick guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he sees this super foxy lady, like she's a stunning beauty at this rest stop. And yeah, I don't know if she's real. I don't, well, before I just totally spoil and ruin everything. I love this, Matt. I love this story so much. I think it's beautifully written. It's rich and deep and layered, and it's only 30 pages long, which blows me away because it's so deep and rich, and the content we get is like, and also it's incredibly impressive with how sophisticated it is. We have a young man who suffered a lot of personal loss. He has sort of grown up, and I think I don't know if there was the terminology we have now about a lost soul sort of trying to seek out or fill that hole with people and substances. Like, I don't know if we had the vocabulary for that in the 70s as we do now.
Right.
But that's what he's doing. This lost soul, he just kind of wants to love someone, specifically a woman. And he wants to be loved by a woman. And it's like a very heartbreaking concept that King is working with here. And it blows me away. This story really blows me away.
Oh, absolutely. And that idea of, like you said, a lost soul, trying to fill that emptiness with any number of things, and in his case, women, and trying to gain, like trying to get access to just personal affection. Like, that is a heartbreaking thing for him. And as we're learning about like his backstory and everything, it gets deeper into that kind of the reasons of his melancholy and his position and everything. It's just, it's very lovely in a weird, messed up sense. Like, I had joked like, oh, it's a romantic story, but like, it kind of is sort of, and in the way that it, like, I don't know, it's so interesting. And also something that the Wikipedia thing is pointing out is that it's another example of, I guess one of the first examples really, of King having this interesting, I guess, obsession with rats, like the recurrence of rats in like so many examples of his body of work, like even rats in If It Bleeds, but also like it mentions on the Wikipedia page, one of your favorites, 1922. Yeah. And then there's one that definitely stands out in Night Shift. Not to push that on you. But yeah, it's just interesting that I don't know if there's a common thread of like what rats represent in King's fiction, or if there's anything like broad to that extent. But like, I find it just interesting that the recurrence of rats in this is really interesting to me. Yeah.
I believe that every King rat story is the greatest thing ever, Matt. Like, it honestly is. I mean, I haven't read a bad one yet. Anytime I see a rat in a King story, I'm like, yes! And I get so pumped and so excited because of the ones you mentioned.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're so good. They're so powerful. And as a symbol, I think you can go a million different directions, but King has been interviewed about rats as something that scare him, like they scare him. He is frightened of them. They're also filthy. They're frightening, slimy. They live in the sewers. But I think in a lot of the stories we have, rats represent something in the subconscious or something in the past that is breaking through.
Yeah.
In 1922, with the protagonist who murders his wife, the rats are representative of the shame and guilt that he is trying to bury. And so in in the novella Rat with the actual little rat talking to our narrator, who I love that story so much.
Me too.
It's like his fear of his inadequacy as a writer, like his fear has manifested into this little creature that's kind of saying, okay, well, here are your options, buddy.
Yep.
So I feel there's never a singular definition for what they represent for each story. I just know he uses it so well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have a lot of rats in this story. And Nona herself might be one, question mark. And so I think with the rat in this story, there's a really cool scene where our narrator, which I don't have a name for him, Matt.
Nope,
do you know?
he's unnamed.
Yeah. Right, which is so even more layered and important that he's unnamed. Like, I love that.
Yeah, he's unnamed, and like he has like no family or anything. He's a ward of the state, and like that is so like representative of his deep lack of any kind of emotional attachment or connection to others, or like his drive to get that is it's just kind of punctuated by us not even having like the text keeping him at an arm's length from us by not even giving him a name is just like next level for me. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, so good. And there's a scene when our narrator's reflecting on his past, and there's a basement scene. He goes down there in the cellar, and there is like a rat giving birth, and it's pretty descriptive. And so that's our first actual encounter with the rat. And then as the symbol in this story, my guess is that it's his unresolved past. It's his unresolved pain that has now, because it went unhealed and unchecked, it has now been used to manipulate him into doom.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, I totally agree. It's just, I have nothing to really say about that except I agree completely.
Very powerful stuff.
Yeah, and the level of violence that comes into play in this, in the kind of, I don't know if I necessarily say randomness of it, but the suddenness of it it's so interesting to me because it comes with such a lack of conscience from him. And by the end of it, which we'll talk about in spoilers, there's just this disconnect where, like I said, we've been kind of kept at arm's length from his psyche, and the way that the book or the story ends, it ends in such a way that it gives kind of an out for him to kind of rationalize some of his actions, but also there is a very strong sentiment that like maybe he doesn't have that out. Maybe that's not something. Maybe it's just he is a terrible, like, evil person. Like, it's so, the layers to that are really interesting to me.
You are so right, because I think one can read it a few ways when we get to the end, which we'll talk more about in the next section. But what's really fascinating is there's a romance equation kind of dangling here, but it's like soaked in sadness.
Yeah.
This guy, our unnamed narrator, he's just, oh man, he loves the ladies so much, and he accidentally picks Ace Merrill's girl.
Yes.
Damn. Not smart, stupid.
Nope.
But he makes a poor choice. And BT dubs, this is a Castle Rock story.
Yes.
And we get some cool fan service there.
Yeah.
He gets in trouble for liking, I wrote her name down. Was it Betsy Mollenfant? Something?
Yes.
Something like that. And
Betsy Mollenfant. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's just, the most lovely girl in the town. And it's like, can you just pick like a Castle Rock 4 or 5 and keep yourself safe, buddy? Because you're going for a Castle Rock 10 who's Ace Merrill's girl. What do you think's going to happen? But anyway. So
that is fantastic.
back on track. He's just really wanting to love and be loved, and going after these ladies he shouldn't be going after. And so Nona, what's so cool to me, Matt, is like at the beginning of the story, he was like, I loved her. And he's like, but I knew it wasn't love, and I shouldn't even use that word, but it was love. And it's like so strange. And they totally bang it out, but it's very, it's described in a way that's incredible and very sophisticated, because he talks about having sex with Nona in a way that she's not even a woman. She's like this entity. And he's like, yeah, we did it, but it was very animal, and it made me feel this way. And almost like he is just being manipulated. He's being controlled by someone. It's so crazy.
Yes. And it's just like, I mean, the kind of succubus nature of it is just so, like, I love that it's not necessarily that story. It's just, it's elements of that type of creature just brought into the story. And just the fact that I don't know, to kind of go back to his emptiness and everything, him having that reaction to having sex with this person that he immediately has like an attraction to, is just, it adds to that sadness of the character too, because it should be fun for him, I guess.
Right?
But no.
It's so crazy. And what I really, really encourage that people spend some time with this one, Matt, because wow, this one is so impressive. Because he talks about when he meets Nona in the diner, this really stuck out to me, because he's a college student, a college dropout. So he's most likely around 18, 19, maybe 20.
Yeah.
So, in my experience, that's the age of hot-blooded male everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, right, exactly. Testosterone's at its highest, so there's a lot of sexual desire in that age group of men. But he sees Nona, and he says her face is like her hair. She has this black hair, these eyes. And there's a quote where he's like, it didn't even matter what her body looked like.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, you wouldn't have even noticed it. It didn't even matter. And I was like, the hell? Because I'm sorry, I'm not to sound too feminazi, but it's like, that would never happen. But that's sort of what King is tapping into with like this creature-like woman.
Yes.
There's something not human about her. She is so sexy and so dangerous. And she kind of reminds me, jumping to Library Policeman really quick.
Oh, yeah.
Ardelia Lortz, who is the villain in that story. And she's a succubus, 1000%.
Yep.
So we that succubus, I'm so glad you mentioned that term, because it's very accurate in this story. Very accurate.
Yeah. And it's from obviously it's from his perspective. So we just get... like, we get his perspective of this pull that he has from her, that she is pulling him into this thing. And when the murders start happening and the violence kind of comes out, it's not even like he's in necessarily a trance. It's just like, it's like an extension of like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. And like, she handed me this object, so I'm going to kill this person. And it's just... there's just a smoothness, for lack of a better word, to the way that it unfolds, and the way that he as the narrator speaks so calmly and matter-of-factly about like where he ends up. There's another layer of just chilling storytelling to that. It's really, really, really well done.
Piggybacking off of that, you got me thinking about, did you ever feel, Matt, that our narrator was unreliable?
Oh, 100%. Yes. That's one of the things that I just find so interesting, is that we don't know. This is one version of events in like late in the story. hinted at or stated that like, well, maybe this isn't the true way that it ended up or that it played out. And like that just recontextualizes everything and offers another perspective that I find that so fascinating because it's pretty open-ended as to what is reality in this world. Like what's real and what's not. I really like it.
The narrative tone is so serious and it's so melancholy that I feel for this guy. I really feel for his pain. And so even when the violence starts, and this is what's nuts about it, usually with such depraved violence, which is what we get, it's like, whoa, cold-blooded murder we get. I think he takes out like 4 people is who I wrote down. I think it's like maybe even 5. I think it's like
I think
2 to 3
5.
cops. Yeah. 2 to 3 cops, 1 like teenager, and then a guy who picks up the 2 of them hitchhiking. And it's like, wow. But what was so crazy and compelling, Matt, is the narrative voice of our main narrator is so soaked in melancholy and sadness, and there's like this weird beauty to it, how he describes Nona and the way where his life has led up until now, that I'm like, I don't hate you. I'm not disgusted by you. I'm not repelled by you. You just killed 5 people. And but I'm still on your team. That's nuts.
And I think that's why this brand of king works so incredibly well, is because he's positioning the story, and he's done this numerous times, but he's positioning the story and the storyteller, unreliable as he may be, he's positioning the story from the perspective of someone who is reflecting on it. So like that melancholy and that like, I guess lack of conscience it's being written or being told to us from a perspective of someone who has spent time reflecting on their actions. It's not like oh, yesterday I hooked up with Nona and then I stuck a screwdriver in the neck of a guy. It's like, no, I'm in prison and like I'm thinking about my life right now, and and it's such a fine like needle to thread or thread to needle. No, I don't know. Anyway, it's such a fine line to be like in this situation where he's telling a story from the perspective of someone who has had time to reflect on it and is not necessarily seeking absolution, but there is this separation of like, well, this is my statement about what happened. I'm reaching the end of my life on this mortal coil. Here's everything from my perspective. Take with it what you will. And just like that level of disconnect from like a life technically, is something that comes through so well in King's writing, where he's writing from the perspective of someone who is just kind of recounting things at the end of their life, essentially. I don't know if that word salad made as much sense as it did in my brain, but I just find it interesting that it's like, it's not a confession. It's just a statement of his perspective of what happened. And it's not like he's seeking like a redemption or seeking any kind of reconciliation from anyone. He's just telling his story. And there's a level of depth to the way that King writes that in several stories, this one included.
I love that. And with that, I think the genuineness of that you're speaking about, this reflection, like it's so heartfelt and genuine that I like don't dislike him. And that's so wild. It's just the reflection. It's so candid that I do believe you are a good person, and maybe somebody made you do these bad things. Like maybe at your heart, you really are a good person.
Yeah.
you didn't mean to murder 5 people.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that this is like something that went through my mind, Matt, but that's how well this genuine reflective tone is coming through.
Yes.
And the beautiful details of this guy's life, we just feel for him so much. And, there's not a lot of Nona character there because she's supposed to be mysterious. She's supposed to be kind of vulpine and creature-like. And so we just trust him so much. And so, this story ends and I'm like, buddy, you might have got a raw deal. I don't know. Like, kind of feel real sad for you. And I'm just so impressed that that's how I feel at the end as the reader.
Yeah. And an analogy, a sloppy analogy that I'll make, or metaphor, I don't know what it would be, but, and this is just not fully formed in my brain. So if it's another word salad, I apologize. But, it's kind of the more concise way of my perspective on it is that the story is being told to us about this man's demons from the perspective of a man who has spent his life wrestling his demons and has had time removed from the moment that he lost to those demons to where he is now, which is basically he has nowhere left to go. So like, I don't know, there's just that level of empathy or that level of melancholy that's just baked into that core kind of setup of the character. And I think that is very deliberate and works incredibly well for the story. And just the fact that, like you said, this is like a 30-page story. Like, there's so much meat in this 30 pages. It's insane.
Absolutely insane. I'm actually I love it so much, Matt. And I'm going to try super hard to like sneak it into my curriculum. Like,
nice.
It's, oh God, it's a little rated R and I think I can get away with it. I just have to make sure everybody's 18 in my class, but I just love it so much. Like it's, because of this mystery that, and then like you said, we do have that unreliable narrator, but it's so delicate at first. And you don't really question sanity until the end,
right?
Where you're like, "Uh-oh, you might have lost me a little." But yeah, the beauty of and richness and depth of this young man's life and how, I mean, he went from like an orphan to a college dropout who just was gonna thumb it to a new life, and then this is what happens, and you're like, "Oh my God."
Yep.
What a slippery slope to a prison cell. Like, wow.
Yeah. And it plays up those kind of not standard king tropes, but like something this is at least this type of story or this type of character is someone that he has written many times, just a drifter kind of wandering without a direction. It's very kind of popular from what I remember in like his 70s and 80s stuff, but even like more recently in like The Institute, the guy, the dude, the cop in The Institute. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, it's just something that he does incredibly well.
You also got me thinking about Riding the Bullet. That the narrator in that one's kind of a drifter. That's a good one. And then in terms of a prison reflection narrative, which I love so much, the short story Bad Little Kid in the Bazaar of Bad Dreams.
I haven't read that.
Oh man.
Okay.
That one's very fun. That one's more on the spooky, confusing side in terms of like who's telling the truth and what's real. But that is another narrator who's going to get lethal injection, like in a matter of hours. And so at the end, the reader is kind of left to decide, was this guy innocent? And so I think King does the same thing here with Nona in asking the reader, not necessarily asking, but saying, I mean, you care for this person. Do you believe he did this of his own volition, or was he coerced by something very dark and very evil? And at the end of this story, I think it was coercion. I don't know if he was a murderous monster,
That's really interesting. Do we need to do a spoiler section? Because I don't know if we need... I don't know. What do you think? Because like we can kind of dive into that in a spoiler, or I don't know.
This story's got me so scrambled, like, in a good way, a really good scrambling that I'm like, well, I mean, for continuity, we can do a spoiler section. So.
Sure. Let's go into spoilers for Nona. If you probably could have finished reading the story in the time we've talked about it, but but go read it and then come back and listen to the spoiler section. I'm going to play a little bit of music here to break up to the spoiler section. So stay tuned for spoilers for Nona, or check the show notes for timestamps to skip to our Gingerbread Girl review. All right, spoilers on for Nona. So Kim, you are on the side of unnamed narrator being coerced by an evil demonic entity of some kind to commit these murders. I will say I am kind of falling on the other side, where I think that Nona is a manifestation of his subconscious wanting some kind of emotional connection with another, human being, and giving him license to go on the killing spree that his life has led to, I guess. That's kind of where I land on it. It's not I'm not too married to that theory, but I kind of think that if, oh God, what was one of the, this is dark, like nail file to my throat, I think, I would probably fall on that side of it. So yeah, what did you think in spoilers?
So I think I'm kind of sandwiching a little bit. I'm like taking some of yours as well, because I don't know if I think it's like an actual creature. There's definitely roots in his subconscious. There's definitely roots in his past pain. That's very valid. But for me, here's where I'm getting the coercion slice. What's so amazing, Matt, about this story is that and the narrator even sort of reminds the reader, when I was hitchhiking, it was like, I don't know, 8 p.m. And then when I got to the diner, or when I left the diner, having caused a huge ruckus, it was like 9 p.m. And then by the time these murders it's been a matter of hours. Like all of this has taken place in a matter of hours. And so for the spoiler portion, they go to a cemetery where his mother, father, and brother were buried. Yeah. Which is very key. And I think it's in Kittery, Maine. Or Harlow. I'm not sure. But he's there, and he's in a mausoleum with Nona, and Nona like transforms into a rat. Yes. And it's very frightening and freaky. And so there's all that. There's like the haunted nature of his family being buried there. He's discovered there by the police alone. Nona is nowhere to be found because she was probably a giant rat the whole time, or a little rat that took on human form, or she was never there at all, like you said, and he just went loop de loop, and all of the past pain, of which he has a significant amount. He's an orphan, ward of the state. He loves women and gets beat up for it, specifically by Ace Merrill. He has a lot of one-night stands. He's doing a lot of binge drinking in college. Like, there's a lot of emptiness and holes in his life. There's a lot of pain. So I think what you said absolutely tracks for that. But at its heart, I think a really hot girl, you did manifest her. And she was real, because I believe in the sensory. I mean, I don't think you had sex with yourself. I think you had sex with something.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I think that you had some coitus with this thing. And so I do believe that experience altered, let whatever out of the cage that was dangerous, murderous, because at the diner, he's like beating the hell out of some bikers or whatever. And it's a really fast switch, Matt.
Yeah.
It goes from like, I'm a completely fine law-abiding citizen to I'm a wild animal maniac. And so for that reason, I'm leaning more towards this dark rat goddess made you do these things.
That's a good point. And about the diner thing, do you think that if we are subscribing to the demon rat lady side of it,
that's our new band name, by the way.
I love it. But like, if we're subscribing to that, is the antagonizing nature of the people in the diner, was that something that Nona facilitated, or was like, did sorcery stuff with to create those circumstances to lead him into, you know, his night of violence?
I think so.
Me too.
I do. Yeah, I think so. I think that she's got the puppet strings here, because he really seems, in his reflection, he was like, I was completely out of control. I didn't even understand what was happening until it was happening. Like he loses time. He's like, I have no idea of I was just hitchhiking and then I was here. And so I do believe that fugue state was kind of created by this dark rat lady, demon rat lady.
That, yeah, I'll agree with that too, because there's also that line where she mentions to him that, you know, I can't remember exactly what she says, but she said something like, when she asks him for a ride, and she's like, I don't want to ride with any of them because of the things that they've said to me before you got here. It's like that manipulation there is so subtle and so wonderful. And it really kind of helps bring us to the violence of the story really well. So yeah.
Absolutely. Because we previously learned that he's had some unrequited love for some girls, a couple of them. Like he's actually writing one in college who is marrying someone else. Like he's had his heart broken quite a bit. And then all of a sudden Nona is like, come save the day and save me. And that's everything he wants to hear. Absolutely everything. So I have a feeling I'm a big believer in like the Stephen King Hand of Fate or the Doom, the Hand of Doom. Like, I do believe like relatively good people can just fall hard and far down. And I don't think this guy is completely innocent. Right. Because due to his sort of traumatized past that went unchecked the whole time. But I do believe demon rat lady and her sex powers didn't help.
Nope. Yeah, absolutely. And so you are much more well-versed in literature than I am. The end where he talks about he can't really take the sound of the rats in the walls or the scurrying and everything. Is that Poe? Is that Poe influenced? Because I kind of feel like it's supposed to be like an Edgar Allan Poe kind of homage of some kind, or is it just King doing, you know, crazy King stuff at the end?
I think it's a little bit of Poe, but I think it's mostly Lovecraft.
Oh, okay, Lovecraft, yeah.
I think it's a big Lovecraft was a big rat guy, so
makes sense.
Poe liked cats, so we got a lot of cat stuff and birds. Poe liked birds and cats. I think there's a rat or two in his stuff, but definitely I'm getting a Lovecraft vibe.
Okay,
sure.
I was thinking more Poe in the sense of like the telltale heart, like beating in the scurrying of that. Also the cask of Amontillado. Just the idea of something in the walls. So yeah.
Oh yeah, totally valid. Like yeah, it absolutely works. Yeah. All of that stuff is American Gothic at its finest. So that tracks absolutely.
it's good stuff either way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Any other spoiler thoughts on Nona? Or any overall thoughts?
Yeah, I did want to ask you about, and I think this is the other big wrench in the story that keeps tripping me up. I had my copy of Skeleton Crew when I was reading, and there's a recurring phrase in this story where Nona continually asks our narrator, do you love?
Do you love? Yeah.
Do you love? And what's crazy, Matt, is I was opening my Skeleton Crew copy, and like before the title page, it says, do you love?
I remember that from the paperback. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. And so therefore, I'm led to believe there's something more going on here, because at present, I don't have a good answer for why she's continually asking that.
Me neither. And from what I remember, I think that phrase comes up in at least one or two other stories in Skeleton Crew. And I don't know what the unifying thing is about it. I feel like I had a theory, but that was like years ago when I read it.
I think you reminded me, I think you're right. And I think in the Reach, isn't there something at the very end? Because the title of the Reach was originally Do the Dead Sing? And
that's right.
So at the very end with Stella Flanders, I think, could be wrong. But at the very end of the Reach, which is so beautiful. I love that story so much.
It's amazing.
It's so good.
That whole collection is great, by the way.
It's fire. I mean, there's like one or two like, and then the rest is just straight fire. But oh my God, at the Reach, I believe they ask Stella that. I think you're right.
So. It might be like the final line of the story, honestly.
Oh my God, that makes me emotional.
Yeah.
if it is the final line, it's so, because that story is already perfect and very powerful. And so if that is the last line, oh my God. But I think it's in the Reach. But I would like to find out where else it is in Skeleton Crew. So you king folk out there, you constant reader experts, please let us know.
Yes, please do.
So we could sleep properly.
Right.
And then, but yeah, because that question, do you love? It's got a positive connotation. It doesn't seem to be like a malignant, malicious thing that she's asking.
Right.
And so for somebody, that's why I'm so confused. And so I think what you mentioned about this is 1000% has passed, that has manifested to unleash this darkness. There's a lot of that tracks, because this question is kind of connected to wholeness and love and belonging, and I don't know. And so she keeps asking it in the midst of these terrible things. I'm confused, but at the same time, I'm led to believe that like maybe this was all just the cruel hand of fate for, I don't know. So I think I need more time to stew in this, to stew on that question and who Nona is. Also, really quick, Nona in Italian means grandma.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
interesting.
I think it's spelled differently. I think it's two N's, but I'm like, King.
There could be a whole other layer to this then.
100%. Like a whole other layer, which, you know, leads me down another rabbit hole. But I'm like, you could have named her like Mona or something like that. So I'm like, Nona must be a real person. Or somebody that really influenced this story. But there is something entertainment wise, Matt. There's something I like. The reason why I want to teach my students like this story, this is such a winner. It is so entertaining.
Oh, totally. Oh, yeah.
You have a sexy woman who invites this young man for sex and murder. And like, I will not have to work hard to sell this at all.
Right.
To any boy in my class.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. By the way, like I did find that Do You Love is in, I think, The Raft and The Reach. and maybe another one. But it was funny because I just quickly Googled, do you love Stephen King? Fortunately, it like worked, but I was like as I was typing it, I was like, what an idiot. Like that's not going to give me the answers I need. But yeah, we can kind of wind down on the Nona review, but man, this story is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, as evidenced by the last freaking hour and a half, I think, or however long. I don't know how long we've been talking about it, but it's been, yeah, for a 30-page story.
Can you believe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can believe because King.
Agree.
Yeah.
Anybody out there who hasn't spent time with Nona, please do, everyone.
Yes. Highly, highly recommend it. I'm trying to look to see where I have it ranked, because I know I have like ranked short fiction and ranked everything. I'm trying to find it here. Okay, short fiction. Here we go. In terms of the short stories in Skeleton Crew itself, I have, out of 22 stories, I have it at number 10. So it made the top 10. I may have to bump that up, honestly.
Yay!
Yeah, which is always the case, really. Especially when I talk to you about anything Stephen King related. Like, okay, so Kim just put this into so much more perspective for me. So yeah, kind of appropriately enough, I bumped it up to number 6, which is just under Grandma.
Very nice.
So yeah. But this is a very good short story from King. Yeah.
Incredibly impressive.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Do you want to go to our second review of the night and talk about the Gingerbread Girl?
I would love to.
Okay, awesome. And before we get into this, just want to say once again, check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And also, if you are wanting to help support the show, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, wherever you find your podcasts and everything. And also subscribe on your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. So that's my spiel. We're going to do our second review of the night for The Gingerbread Girl, which was originally published in the July 2007 issue of Esquire and was later collected in King's Just After Sunset collection in 2008. A very sloppily written plot summary that I did before recording is as follows. A woman grieving the loss of her child to crib death takes up running as a means to cope. Following an argument, she and her husband agree to a trial separation while she stays at her father's summer home. While running, she crosses paths with a dangerous man. So, Kim, why did you choose this one too?
Oh, wow. So Gingerbread Girl, along with Nona, had that edge and violence that is very, very memorable. And it also had that grief at its heart. I think both stories have a tremendous amount of violence, but at their core, there's a real sad story.
Yeah.
To where the violence, it's not gratuitous. It's just sort of a kind of the aftermath of these people's very sad lives. And so I felt like they kind of were connected in that way. Great characters, great character backstories, a lot of heart, and then, whoa, crazy violence.
Yes. Like, first of all, the Gingerbread Girl, if nothing else, the importance of cardio. Amazing. But it's something that is just so striking. The way that King weaves in this woman who is going through an unimaginable loss, and the way that he just delicately showcases her coping mechanisms and how she's dealing with it. And to an extent, some of her like, support system with her father, and just like that, it's an interesting contrast to the unnamed narrator in Nona, because here we have a woman who has like the support of her father, who is caring and willing to let her stay in his summer home and all of that. But also like she has her own, like she's dealing with this like unimaginable situation, but she's also coping with it in somewhat healthy ways, with running and everything. But also it's, I don't know, it's just there's a certain strength to her character that I find really, really I find myself really drawn to, especially when it gets to that crazy thriller thing where she has to like fight for her life, and it's a really good story. So yeah,
I'm so glad you love it, because this is so memorable. I think it's one of those where when I think about the Gingerbread Girl, the power of Emily, our main character, she's really struggling to kind of like stay sane and stay alive after losing her baby. And it looks like her marriage is on its way out too. Her whole life's fallen apart. And when the thriller portion happens, halfway in through the story, this lady has to decide if she wants to live. And it's very powerful. And I really like Gingerbread Girl because it kind of reminds me of the, although not so much the revenge part of Big Driver, where we have our female protagonist who's victimized. Okay. Big Driver, of course, is much more violent. Oh my god, Matt! Like,
I haven't read that one yet.
You'll love it. It's great. But our main character Tess in Big Driver is raped and left for dead, and she kind of it's real bad, and she totally plugs into like Batman vigilante justice and goes hunting. So it's great.
Nice.
But with Gingerbread Girl, this is a lady who is so broken and so sad. And then she encounters this horrific, monstrous character. And she has to choose life when there are several moments where she can very easily just let it go. Yeah. And I think I kind of love that because it's really encouraging. It's really encouraging to that despite all the pain and suffering that one can endure in this life, it's still worth living. And I think that's the ultimate message of this story that King brings to the reader is like, don't give up. Do not give up on life.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I love about that specifically is that King doesn't make it easy for her to get to choose life. He makes it so incredibly difficult. Like it's like when she gets into this situation where she is faced with she's going to be killed. Like it is so difficult. It is such an uphill battle for her to get the upper hand. And that, like, on the surface, that the pacing of that, the thriller aspect of that is incredibly strong, really well written, really great. But it's just also there's again, I'm going to try to say thread the needle I think that's it. Thread the needle. Yeah. King successfully threads the needle by having it not be like a gratuitous thing or any kind of, like, he makes it about the character. And like that's nothing that we should be surprised by with King, but just the way that he threads the needle between making it this thrilling, like propulsive, terrifying situation that she's in, while also making it about a deeper level of her character and her journey, and making it a complete arc is really impressive.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And one of this is slightly spoilery, but not too bad. But one of the ways that our character keeps from fainting is she will actually bite down on her lips to like bring fresh blood. And it's such a there's a lot of visceral content. Like I would say this is a 52-page story, Matt, I think. And
I think so. Yeah. It's like, it says it's a novella, but I think it's like maybe just shy of a novella. Yeah. It's like, it's right on the border there.
Absolutely. And half of those 50 pages is this lady's escape. And I think that is really awesome. And that's where the thriller aspect can definitely be applied, because King is making the reader tunnel vision on this woman.
Yep.
Stuck, trapped. And I haven't read Gerald's Game yet, but I know that's a very big thing.
Yes. I definitely got Gerald's Game vibes from this. Mostly just because of just the general premise. A character is confined in a space and needs to get away. That kind of blows my mind you haven't read Gerald's Game yet, because I'm very curious what you'll think of that. But anyway, it definitely has those vibes.
So excited to read Gerald's Game. I think it's a mystery how I haven't read certain things yet.
We all haven't read certain things, yeah.
And then when I talk, I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? I got it. But I guess the other cool thing about this story, the Gingerbread Girl, is he referencing, I believe he is, that nursery rhyme, you can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man?
Yes. I forgot like the certain elements of the gingerbread man, like nursery rhyme, but like you can't catch me, I'm the gingerbread man. That's so interesting, because like such a big part of her story is she's running. And like there's obviously like the kind of obvious thing, like, oh, she's running away from, her grief and like confronting like what this terrible loss has done to her life and her marriage. She's running away from that to cope with it or to avoid it. And then this situation comes up where she decides, like in this moment, she decides like, this is where I fight to survive. I don't know. I just think that's kind of an obvious read of it, but I don't know. I think it works.
I think so too. And as simple as, when we describe like what the story is about, it does seem pretty simple, but it's very, very nuanced.
Yes.
Very nuanced. One thing I wanted to bring up with you is King mentions we have flashbacks to Emily's past. She grew up in Chicago, and we are somewhere in Florida, like some fictional key.
Yeah.
It's not, I wish it was Duma Key, but it's not.
I thought that too. I was like, oh, it would have been cool to have like a little reference to Duma Key or something. I think it's Vermilion Key. Is that what it is? Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. And so she grew up in Chicago, kind of a tomboy, and then she's in Florida now. And what was very compelling is King says, I was outside playing with boy stuff rather than watching Olsen Twins and Powerpuff Girls.
Ah, yes.
So that's the mark of a 90s kid, which you and I are.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time of this publication, Matt, Emily would be a young mom. Like, this is a younger lady. And when I first read this story, I was like, oh, easily late 30s, early 40s. I don't know why. And so
that's so interesting. Huh.
Isn't that wild? And so then when I read that, I was like, okay, you're very young, lady. Like you're a millennial. You're a young mom. So then that shifted for me even more, because this lady has really her whole life ahead of her. And so the death of this child, the ending of this marriage, this loss of identity, it makes sense that she would have like the drive and the vitality to keep going. But that was a huge thing. So I'm really kind of curious as to how old she is.
Yeah, for some reason, I just imagined her being relatively young. Like I was thinking mid to late 20s.
Okay.
That's just based solely on the fact that she calls her dad and like is seeking, confiding in her dad. That kind of seems like a young person thing, if that makes sense. But yeah, contextualizing that with the Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen thing, like, yeah, I would think she would be like around our age. Like, I mean, my sister loved watching to Grandmother's House We Go, I think.
Oh my God, that was the best one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I loved it too. Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Or any of the Halloween Town. Oh my God, they're so good. I love those movies. I miss being young now.
Me too. Me too.
But
yeah,
younger, I should say. We're still young.
Sure.
But
yes, we have our youth. Yeah. Yeah.
Although I am very happy to have been born when I was born. We're the last generation before the internet.
Oh my God. Yes, me too. I think about that a lot. Like knowing, this is a tangent and I'm sorry, but like knowing
I'm here for it.
How like anxious and how undiagnosed depressed I was in my teen years, in the way that our like lives as teenagers, like in terms of everyone, how everything is the most important thing in the world, any inconvenience is earth-shattering. The idea of having that and having every single piece of information known to man in our pocket is I don't know how. I can't.
It makes me very sad it gives me a lot of sympathy for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because it's like, wow, when you and I were rebelling, dang, we didn't have anybody's phone documenting that.
Right.
And it allowed us to be risky and to develop character through risk. Like, we couldn't wait to get our driver's licenses. We couldn't wait to party and experiment with drugs and do alcohol and all this stuff and go away to college and leave our homes. We couldn't wait. And now, because there's just this, like, the evil eye of Sauron is everywhere, these generations are so risk averse. No one wants to get their driver's license. No one wants to leave home. Yeah. There's a real muted sense of independence and a very stunted, nobody wants to take risks.
Yeah.
And that's very sad.
It is. And like the idea that everyone has a spotlight on them, or there is always going to be the potential for a spotlight on them. So that creates this, I don't know, maybe Gen Z is getting set in their ways at a way too young age.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're Gen Z and you're listening to this, I would say, this is so dumb. I would say, do what I did. Start a live journal and
oh dear.
Like, do that.
Well, I love what they're doing now. They're bringing back, the old school phones. They're going off grid.
Oh, are they really?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
A lot of them are. A lot of them, like you and I with our little TI-83, whatever.
Wow. The T93 things. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Like flip phones and stuff too.
Yep, they're flip phoning it because they are absolutely bogged down in mental health hell from all the social media rewiring and, the dopamine draining from all of this content creation. Everybody's going insane because of the rat race.
Jeez.
And so, I think Gen Z is pulling out our old phones that don't have internet, and
now,
I'm excited for them.
Yeah, to that though, I'll say, fine, you can do that. But also, keep something plugged in so you can download The Year of Underrated Stephen King and Tower Junkies.
Very smart.
Yes. Yeah.
By all means.
Yes. Or
at least have us on your desktop.
Exactly.
For crying out loud.
Exactly. Yes. And also check out Patreon. But yeah. So that kind of blows my mind. So back to the Gingerbread Girl.
I loved that tangent. I love that tangent.
Oh, that's fantastic.
One final thought.
Yes.
A millennial. As much as I want to be a brat about getting older and all the things, I wouldn't change at all being born in 1986.
Oh, same here. Like that. Yeah, like sometimes I get a little bit, I guess, wistful in thinking about like, sometimes I do wish I was maybe just slightly older in the 90s to really get the 90s experience.
Yeah.
But also, I think that no matter what, just because of who I am as a human being, I think no matter what, like my adolescence would have been just devoted to media and everything and lead me to here. Because I don't know, I was very much a homebody and very much into movies and TV at a young age. So
love it. And it brought you to now.
Exactly.
The hardest working man in podcasting.
Yes.
Chatting Gingerbread Girl with me.
Exactly. So this is such a weird pivot, but the violence. How did you feel about, like, we talked a little bit about the thriller aspect of it and the violence therein. How'd you feel about it, if you want to expand more on that?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about T93 texting now, so.
I know, it's amazing. Yeah, it's totally really happening. There's a couple cool articles. But
wow.
with Gingerbread Girl, so this story is so fun and cool, Matt, because we really have such a tonal shift where all of a sudden our Emily is jogging around. She's just trying to get her life back on track, which more power to this girl. It sounds like she's been able to take like 3+ months off of work.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she's just jogging. That's what she's doing. She's like eating stovetop lasagna or Stouffer's. She's eating Stouffer's lasagna, salads. She's running. She's really bony and very in shape. And so that's what she's doing. And then all of a sudden she sees some blonde hair hanging out of a trunk, and she goes, and therein, wow, we absolutely get this onslaught of violence. And I thought it was very effective because by the time we get to that twist of like, oh, our girl Emily's going to have to literally run for her life.
Yep.
And fight for her life, it really made the stakes so much higher. Like, oh, dang. And so I think it's effective. There are some parts that I'm very much cringing, and I'm like, ugh, I don't like this, but very effective. And I think it made the whole story kind of sing a little bit like, oh, this is legit.
Oh, absolutely. And front loading it so much with Emily's personal experience, with like the trauma she's going through, the grief, all of that, and building up to that makes that pivot to sudden violence and sudden danger so much more effective. And like, I think that that's, I don't know if I would say it's an inherently King thing, but it's something that King is very good at, is making like, I don't want to say necessarily that, oh, a lesser writer would build up the suspense of this man who is killing women or is like nearby and a constant threat, while, oh, this innocent woman is running, and like the tension is like, oh, there's a monster in her midst that she doesn't know about. Instead, King takes us on a journey through her life and the worst experience of her entire life up to this point, and then is like, hold my beer. And I think it is just so effective in terms of his storytelling and the way that he's able to just capture our attention with that deep dive into Emily's grief and her story, without needing to hold our hand with like, oh, there's a monster here though. Like, keep reading about this woman. I'll give you the good stuff later, but keep reading about this. It's more like, no, this is this character. I'm going to introduce you to her, and you're going to be very, very traumatized by the tension and suspense of her predicament that I get her into in the second half. It's one of many reasons why I love King and everything that he does.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This one has such a terrific balance. I think Nona does as well. Like I said, with the character heart, we care about these characters.
Absolutely.
We care deeply. And then when this bad stuff happens, we now have to contend with what we know.
Yep.
And we're like, oh God, this is very frightening. This is very hard to stomach because I care for this character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do we want to talk in more specifics in a spoiler section for the Gingerbread Girl?
I would love to. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and play some more music, and we're going to go into spoilers for the Gingerbread Girl. Go read it in just after sunset, and then come back and listen to our spoiler talk on the Gingerbread Girl. All right, so spoilers on for the Gingerbread Girl. Kim, let's talk about Emily's imprisonment, her predicament, her
Oh my God.
everything that's terrifying about the last half of this story.
Oh God, it's so bad. And speaking as a female, we have to contend daily with being murdered, sadly. And so this is basically every woman's worst nightmare.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that when I was telling you about the long walk thing. I feel like that is such a place of privilege that I have that like, oh yeah, I'll go walk this trail. I'll have my earbuds in. So I'll have like, you know, some of my senses dulled to everything around me and my attention not everything because, hey, I'm a man. I can do that. And like, meanwhile, like my friend Jess, she's like, I would love to go walk the trails and stuff, but kind of can't like without like a trail buddy. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I'm so sorry we live in this world.
I know, it's terrible. Yeah, she ain't wrong. She ain't wrong. Every time a woman decides to just say, screw it, I'm going for a walk, guess what? We get murdered. It's just
it's
really
horrible.
tragic.
Yeah.
It's really
yeah. So I just wanted to make it clear that I am very much aware of the privilege that I have and how just fucking horrible it is for women to just exist here. It sucks. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes.
and enjoy that walk, my friend.
I will.
It would be nice. I wish I could fly to Indianapolis so we could go together. Because that would be fun. We could live pod
that
together.
Would be awesome. Yeah, you're always welcome.
Excellent. But yeah, so wow. Emily has been attacked. She is hit in the back of the head, which is such a scary thing.
Yes.
Being knocked out, and she is kidnapped, sort of. She's taken prisoner by this Florida white man, this somewhat respectable, he's passing as like a kind, law-abiding citizen. And his name is Pickering, is all we know. Yep. And she is tied to a chair with so much duct tape, Matt.
Yes.
Oh my God. So much duct tape. So much duct tape. Oh my God. So our poor Emily is just, and from what the text reveals, I get the feeling she's kind of a petite person.
Well, because throughout her running, like I think the description is that she's like not losing weight in necessarily a healthy way, but just like pushing herself to a limit to where she's like just shrinking to an extent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She is covered in duct tape, and it's really heartbreaking because she cannot move and she's tied to this chair. She is absolutely trapped in all ways one can be trapped, and it's quite heartbreaking. And then thankfully the main guy Pickering leaves the scene to go murder another innocent who knows potentially where Emily would be. So he's on a rampage, and decides, I'll be right back. Gotta go bump this other innocent person. And when I get back, so really, really gross, very, very icky. But what I enjoy about Pickering is King, through dialogue, makes him kind of a cool villain too. Like, he comes in and he's singing "Oh Susanna," like, yikes.
He's very like unhinged and very much unpredictable. And in addition to that, I think that there's a level, maybe this is something I'm putting into it, but there's a level of like, I think you may have mentioned, like, he's kind of passing as like a non-monster person. He is someone who is presumably wealthy. He has a nice car. He has like a very nice estate on this like vacation area place, but he is completely off his fucking rocker.
Yes.
And yeah, that's just that adds a certain level of just unpredictability to the proceedings. Yeah,
absolutely. What we come to find out as the reader is this ain't his first rodeo when it comes to murdering women. I believe that's actually a direct quote. Is like, oh yeah, he's done this before. We have a literal dead body of a woman named Nicole in the trunk, whose throat has been slit, really graphic. And what was very chilling is the reason why he killed her. I mean, we're assuming as such, is he was like, oh yeah, she tried to stab me. So why? And then one of my favorite parts in this harrowing scene in which Emily's imprisoned and is feverishly trying to escape and really harming her own body in order to do that, is there's a physical fight. It's very reminiscent of Paul and Annie. It's a brawl.
Yes.
Really, really good. And there's knives involved, which really creeps me out. I hate slasher anything. And so he gets slashed and he looks at her and he goes, "Why would you cut me?" Yes. Oh my God, Matt.
So good. Like, there's just so much to that I feel is just so there. It's incredible. It's incredible. Just that disconnect. And like the way that she, like when she mentions that, like, oh yeah, that guy knows that I'm here. So like she says that with the intention of like, okay, well, maybe he'll let her go, or maybe it'll go a better way because he'll be afraid that, you know, he'll get caught. But instead it's just like, okay, well, I'll do my job. I'll go murder this person, since they know that you're here. And then when she like cuts him or stabs him, and like you said, he has that response of like, why would you do that? It's just like that. There's such a chilling aspect and sadly authentic aspect to that, where like people, it's I don't know, people are just like, well, why would you do that? Why would you? I can't. It's insane.
It is. It's so freaky. It's so freaky and creepy because he is clearly so disconnected with his actions, and he's so entitled in his narcissism and in his outlook of the world. Like, well, of course I killed her. Like, look at what she did to me. Why would anyone do that to me? Like, oh my God, you psycho.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I love that. I thought that was so chilling, and it's very subtle. Like, all we know is, like you said, he's a seemingly wealthy 50-ish guy who has an estate, in quotes, on the key. And yeah, he's a total serial killer, we're led to believe. And God, that what I've noticed is like King definitely makes this escape scene the heart of the story. And it really is the heart. And so Emily is, she is doing everything she can to break this chair apart, to slice through the duct tape and her own skin. In addition to that, she is so broken. Oh my God, Matt, the physical violence that our protagonist endures and survives is incredible.
It's incredible. Absolutely. Yep.
How She throws herself out a window.
Yes. It's so like, and then past that, like there's like that, like you're absolutely right. It's the heart of the story where she is determined to still survive. She's determined to get out of this. This is a big like breakthrough moment for her. And then when she is running to get away, like when she runs into the guy who is in a position to potentially help her, but there's that language barrier that also adds to Pickering being just so chilling in his own way, because he doesn't like, clearly there is a bad situation occurring, and he thinks, oh, I can just charm this guy. I know more Spanish than she does, so I can just explain like, oh yeah, that's fine, because I have no idea, or I have no like I have no concept of the things that I'm doing being bad, even if it's murdering people. Like it is just so like subtle, but it's rich, and it's just, there's that antagonist thing that King is so damn good at.
The scene that you're speaking about, Matt, with the Hispanic man is so disturbing for me. Like absolutely so graphic and so violent and haunting. It's gore. It's real gore filled, very frightening, effective, but wow. I hated it, but at the same time I'm like, this is part of this ride. Yep. Wow.
Yeah, the scissors aspect of it, like that last thing about it where she's like, it says like, oh, she saw like the scissors in his eye, and I'm like, oh my god, that's just like, that simple line is just like, the image is in my brain forever, and it's terrifying and graphic.
Absolutely, forever.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I really hate it because this man that's involved in this horrific attack, he's stabbed everywhere. It's terrible, but he is the complete definition of an innocent bystander.
Absolutely. Yep.
It is very upsetting. He kind of tries to help Emily, or he inserts himself in the scene trying to help her. It just goes very, very south for him. Yeah. Very quickly.
It's rough. It's very rough.
Very rough. And I want to say, when I read Just After Sunset, I was still pretty early on my King journey.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't think I had read very many visceral scenes like that. And so that was an education, Matt. That was like, ooh, I don't like this.
Yeah.
But I think the hardcore violence and the really in-your-face stuff that happens in Gingerbread Girl, it just works so well.
Oh,
I gotta
absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with like the strength of the character that she's finding in herself and everything. And in the end where he just drowns, and like she's just like, there's this weird triumphant energy to her where she's just watching him drown. And it's, I don't know, there's something to that she's not, like, she's gone through this horrific ordeal, and like the bloodlust in the reader, and I don't know if I'm exposing something about myself and if this isn't common, but like as the reader, we want him to get his comeuppance. We want her to triumph over him and just destroy him. But the fact that he just drowns and she watches, like, there's this cleanness to that where her, like, she's already gone through horrible things in her life, even before this, that it's good that she's not, like, muddying her like, brain with trauma of, like, physically just destroying this guy. Instead, it's just like, yeah, you know, maybe a shark got him, and that's why he got pulled under.
I do love that. I love that. I like that it's got a very light touch, like you said. She's already been through enough. She doesn't need to do any more. She doesn't need to be haunted by this any more than she probably already will be forever. But yeah, I love that it ends in the water. She gets the upper hand. He's just kind of bobbing out there and disappears.
Yep.
It just, chef's kiss. It works so well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Just After Sunset, by the way, a really good collection. Like, I haven't read it in a handful of years, but I remember, if I remember correctly, this one has a lot of really good stuff, but also has this like thread throughout at least one or two of the stories where he wrote them in like the 2000s. So there's a lot of like post 9/11 stuff in this that I just found so fascinating. In particular, the story, The Things They Left Behind, it's a post 9/11 story, and it's beautiful. But yeah,
that one is really rich. You are correct. Yeah, there's a lot that I'm remembering now that I'm isolating Just After Sunset that are very successful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Gingerbread Girl?
Oh gosh, we've covered quite a bit.
We have.
it's so fun, Matt, and it's so wild. Like, I think we really dig into these stories, and then at the end, I was like, "Oh wow, there's so much more to say." And that's how you know King is a genius.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why you know that. Like, I can have a podcast that's 94 episodes deep into Stephen King, and we haven't even scratched the surface of like his work. And yeah, it's a joy to be a constant reader.
That it is. This one, I'm so thrilled to have. Both of them are so near and dear, so it was so great to pick them apart a little bit.
Yeah.
I just really want people to make sure they've spent some time with these ones. If you're going to audiobook them, get the text in front of you. It's a very rich experience. I understand if you're busy and you can't, but notice the nuance of what's going on. It's not just a thriller. In both of these stories, they're not just thrillers. There's so much more going on in terms of grief, of the soul, of there's a lot of deep stuff here. Absolutely.
And I'm so delighted that you chose these stories and that you spent so much of your time with me tonight talking about these. We will go ahead and kind of wind down the episode then. I'm so out of practice with Tower Junkies, by the way, that because this is the first episode we've had since December. But before we go, Kim, would you mind telling people where they can find you online and tell us about the Year of Underrated Stephen King as well?
I would love to. First of all, thank you so much, Matt. It's so nice to come on Tower Junkies. This is one of my favorite places to chit chat, to let my hair down, to be a wild girl. So I'm such a fan, and thank you and Tiny for continuing to do the Lord's work. So
yes.
But yeah,
welcome anytime.
My show is a little different from all the lovely gentlemen podcasters in this community. I am a one-woman show. I try to make a lot of friends and have some constant reader interviews as often as I can. But because I'm a university fiction teacher, I am always bringing King to the classroom. So that's what my show does, is talk about his work like I would with my students, and how I often do both. Sometimes I'll talk about a King story and then I'll come home and podcast about it. So It's a lot of fun. But you can find me in all the places where I'm on I'm on all of the socials except for TikTok. I'm on there, but it's like me, and I'm just like a voyeur. I'm just a scroller and not a poster, and I just like all of Matt's videos like 80 times. So,
and I appreciate that so much, by the way.
Happy to support. So, but yeah, so I'm not on TikTok, but I'm on Threads, X, Insta, and I'm often checking the show's email at underratedsk@gmail.com if you want to say hi, if you have any book recommendations. I am also resuming my Dark Tower journey this year.
Yes.
I have never finished the tower before, so this is a whole new experience for me. I'm reading these books for the very first time, and it's a real treat, and I have so many amazing resources in my life that have made it such a rich journey, but I definitely love chatting with listeners, so I'd love to chat with all of you, and thank you so much for supporting Tower Junkies as well as the Year of Underrated Stephen King.
Yes, and links to all of Kim's stuff is in the show notes of this episode. And like we said at the beginning, she's going to be, we said that at the beginning, right? You're going to be launching a Patreon soon. So be on the lookout for that. Very soon. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for joining me. And of course, to the listeners, thank you for listening. Make sure you check out Kim's podcast. And if you don't mind, go to Apple Podcast, Audible, Spotify, wherever you listen to the show, and subscribe, rate, and review the show so that it gets out to more people. Also, if you want to chat, send me an email at matt@obsessiveviewer.com about this or any other podcast. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer, a weekly movie show that I host, and Anthology, which is all about the Twilight Zone and other sci-fi anthology shows. And finally, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can get access to tons of bonus content. I'm doing Flanagan Fridays, every Friday reviewing something of Mike Flanagan's oeuvre. So having said that, thank you. Having said that, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to start playing us out. And Kim, once again, such a delight. So happy to have you on the show. And can't wait to talk to you more about any number of things. So thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy. Long days and pleasant nights.
Yes, and may you have twice the number. I completely forgot that was the outro, too.
You're a little rusty-dusty, but still good.
I am, yes. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive feed. For this and more exclusive content, join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. They're even more susceptible to haunting and being scared and being frightened and being threatened by haunting forces because the family dynamic is so broken and dysfunctional that strength, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 strength is not present when they're together. And I think that is just exquisite. I think that is incredibly well done, especially since the episode is them all leading them back to Hill House.
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.